Hello folks, welcome to Legacy IAS. Now we have a slide that says what is a developed nation. We all know this in pretty common terms. We've seen it in newspapers, we've seen it in normal colloquial languages that we have, the conversations we make. Just in case, let's still look at what is a developed nation. Okay, a developed nation or industrialized country, economically well developed. Basically, that is one of the most distinguishing factor between a developed economy and a developing economy. Okay, and technologically advanced, obviously, and high quality of life among other things. Yes, basically, socially, economically, and all the other factors get included, and that is one of the main differences between developed economy and developing economy, or a developed nation and a developing country. What is a developing nation or a developing economy? Here, nation and economy, we can be using it, interchangeably, because at the end of the day, that determines the nation. Okay, a state with with a less developed industrial base and a lower human development index (HDI) relative to other countries. So this is not a universally accepted definition. Okay, so basically, in simpler terms, developing nation is something which is economically not very well developed. Socially, social differences might be there. A developing nation, as the name states, one of the prior things is that economy is still developing and so is the social sectors. Also, we've come across a word here, human development index. Now we all know, part of us would know what human development index is. Now, for example, for a human to develop, what are the things that he needs? Okay. Now, let's say it may be education, health, life expectancy, any of those. Where do you think this human development index will be on a higher scale? Maybe on a developed nation or a developing nation? It seems pretty obvious that a developed nation which is having access to more economy, okay, that will have a relatively rather higher HDI index compared to a developing nation. Yes, this is pretty standard. This is all well-known topics. Why are we discussing this without even entering into the topic? On simpler terms, yes, this is what we spoke about. Right? A developed nation has better living standards, economy, HDI, etc. Yes. Is this condition always true? That, what is that condition? Will a developed economy always have or provide a better HDI index? Okay, one of the examples that we have come across recently is that Japan ranked lowest among the developed countries in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index 2022. Yes, we all know that Japan is a developed country. It's among the G7 country. It is also a part of OECD countries. If Japan is such a developed country, then why is it faring or it's come ranked lowest among all the developed countries? Why is that? What is this scenario? Thus, we enter to our topic. Does a developed economy guarantee a developed HDR, Human Development Index? That is the topic of the day. Let's enter into the topic. Now, we've been coming into looking at what is HDI. Now, according to UNDP, this is the standard definition it gives. Human Development Index was created to emphasize that people and their capabilities should be the ultimate criteria for assessing the development of a country, not economic growth alone. Right? Yeah. If a country is just economically well developed, like we kept telling, developed country or a developed nation or a developed economy, we said we will use it interchangeably based on one of the prime factors being economy. But UNDP tells for a human to grow, alright, for a human to grow, just that economy is not sufficient. He or she needs other factors. What are those other factors? Let's look at that. Now, according to that index, whatever, if there is an index, they have to measure it based on something. Yes, what is that they are basing on? A long and healthy life, human being knowledgeable, okay, and having a decent standard of living, health, okay, health, education, all that basic decency for living, a respected, dignified life, etc. All that comes under this umbrella of HDI. Yes. Okay. Now we'll just look at some HDI rankings, okay, of 2022. Japan is at 20th position, Norway is at first position, India is at 131st position, Hong Kong 7, Bangladesh 133, Myanmar 147, Pakistan 154, Afghanistan 169, Niger 189, the last ranker. Okay, now we said that Japan has HDI index of 20, right? It's pretty not comparatively bad. But here we discussed or we saw that Japan ranked lowest among developed countries in the World Economic Forum's global gender gap. If HDI is doing faring better, 20 is a decent rank, right? Be it in UPSC or in other conditions, 20 is a decent rank. Among that scenario, why are we telling that it has fared low in global gender gap? What do you think is the scenario here? If it is providing a good, now for example, we said HDI, which means we have better access to healthcare, better access to education. And in this scenario, one might assume, okay, one isn't wrong in assuming that yes, if such good things are given, then probably the gender gap or the equality, the basis concept of equality will also persist among two gendered men and women because together they make up a society. Yes, men alone cannot make up a society, women alone cannot make up a society. Men centered societies are there, women centered societies are there, but men alone society, not women alone society can't exist. Right? Biological reasons and other reasons, most of all. Right? Under that condition, if it is faring so well in HDI, why is it very lowest in global gender gap? Or basically the comment of men and women, inequality. Why is that persisting? How does that affect Indian scenario? Right? We'll have a look at that. Now, as we saw, the gender gap report, India is at 135th position, Japan is at 116th position. In the HDI, it had 20th position, and now in the gender gap, it's fallen across so far behind to 116th position. This is a very drastic change. What is causing this drastic change and how is it impacting other countries? Iceland at first place, Norway at third, yes. Alright, now we have been saying gender gap for quite a while now. What exactly is this gender gap based on? Gender gap in labor market recovery, basically labor or your workforce, alright. Then gender gaps in care work, gender gaps in leadership, gender gaps in political representation, gender gaps in wealth accumulation. So just by this slide, okay, we can make an idea or we can get to a conclusion that if Japan is at a position of 116th, then probably the gender gap, now by gender gap we mean women and men, right? Comparatively, women are lower, let's say in leadership. Let's take an example of leadership. The leadership positions held by men are higher compared to women. Okay? Whereas in Japan's case, the leadership position held by men is very high compared to women. Women are very negligible in that cases. Okay? That is what your gender gap means. Okay? Next. Why? Why is this? Japan being OECD country, G7 country, all that we spoke, developed nation, higher economy. Okay? Amongst all that, one contradicting factor is that it's good in HDI also. If that is the case, why is it low in gender gap report? Again, look here. Social fabric. Okay. Social fabric as in women are to do these roles, men are to do these roles. The important decision making, whatever they say, okay, that gets segregated. Here, the decision making as a concept gets segregated in the society. For example, according to their perspective, men may be better at decision making. Men might have a different prominence in the society compared to women. The sectors are getting segregated. Most importantly, look at this thing here. The sectors, each sector in life, in role, in banking, in education, in healthcare, in labor force, in political ideology, in political administration, etc. Everything, women and men are distinguished. Women and men are differentiated. Thus, in turn, yes. Now, if you say women and men, are they different? Yes, on a large scale, on a very large scale, biologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, on a large scale, both of them are very different. Now, here we do not want to tell that the difference is a good thing or a bad thing. We just have to see the difference as a holistic thing, because that's how society is going to survive. As we said in earlier case, there is no women only society or men only society. There can be a society which has both women and men, right? Under that pretext, if you keep segregating sectors, women centric jobs, men centric jobs, women centric place, among all these things, at the end of the day, see, division in its own is not a bad thing. Okay, division will become a bad thing when there is a hindrance. Alright, when there is a social fabric that gets attached, when there is a social stigma that gets attached, under that condition, division becomes a bad thing. Now, here the differences are seen as divisions rather than a whole or inclusive. Okay, one of the reasons Japan could be having this is the life culture balance or work life balance. Work life balance between for men is different, work life balance for women is different. Okay, that's segregated. This is how it is supposed to be. It is more stringent on the gender norms. Okay, the stringent on gender norms is a very hard rule. It takes time and years to break that kind of mentality. Okay, that in turn adds a hindrance to the economy. Okay, now for example, women, okay, you have seen that the fertility rate is decreasing. Okay, the population of Japan is decreasing. Okay, the amount of marriage, okay, or the rate of marriage is decreasing. Okay, all this, okay, in the long term have a very devastating effect on the economy and in turn on the nation as well. Under this condition, Japan, which is a leading country, is lagging behind in gender gap, which in turn on the long term or the long run will prove very detrimental to it. Now we've been speaking about Japan for a while, yes, but how is it? Okay, how is it having any impact on India, or should it have an impact on India? Okay. Now, why are we discussing this in the case of India? Okay. See, in Japan, we said it's a developed country. Yeah. India is a developing country, right? India also wishes to transform itself into a developed nation. Now we are looking at an example of a developed nation. If India wants to become a developed nation, if it wants to transform itself, I think it's a very good thing to take example or to take the advice, okay, of what the negatives or what the disadvantages of a developed nation is. Okay. In case of India, India wants to transform itself into a developed nation. If it wants to transform itself into a developed nation, then it is probably a good idea to take note of what other countries are facing or what other developed economies are facing. India transforming from a developing country to a developed country is bound to happen. But sustaining that developed nation comes at a cost. Okay, like what Japan is facing. Now we have to take example from that. We have to correct our source so that we will sustainably stay in the developed nation scenario. Okay. Now, what are we supposed to do for that? See, recognize the role of women in a holistic nation development. Alright, and improve. Yeah, most importantly, this is the one thing that we have to improve. Yes, in this case, Japan's case, HDI is 20. Gender gap is 116. In our HDI itself is 130 plus. Okay, so first we have to improve our HDI index. Okay, at the same time improve our gender gap index also. Alright, womenomics, the topic we have to lay more stress on. We'll look into that in next videos as to what it was. Then a reduction in gender specific rule. See, in all the paper politics, all the things, all the promises, we see equality, equality, equality. That just isn't paper. I'm not telling nowhere it is implemented, but mostly in this case, when you say equality, largely it is on paper rather than on execution. Okay. Now, what is the current scenario with respect to India? Let's discuss a little bit more detail with India. Okay. Now, the development, it's either going to be exclamatingly, alarmingly good, or again bad, or will it happen itself? That is also a question mark. Will it happen? Will it not happen? How much? If it happens, in what pace is it going to happen? If it is not going to happen, why is it not going to happen? Or if it is done. Okay. Either way, scenarios are possible. Okay. In 2022, coming back to the pandemic, okay, the scenarios that are existing, we carry the burden of a pandemic, war, economic crisis. Amongst all this, the global gender gap has been closed by 68.1%, which means at the current rate of progress, it will take 132 years to reach full parity, full equality between men and women. Okay. Among all the regions, it will take the longest for South Asia to reach the target. The target here being equality, parity between two genders. That is 197 years, almost 200 years we have to wait. Okay, if it goes in the same level of progress, if we do not do whatever the thing is, we cannot wait for metamorphosis here. We need rapid development. Okay, if we undergo the same metamorphosis, it will take us more than 200 years to get a basic right of equality in all spheres. Okay, due to a broad stagnation in gender parity scores in the region of South Asia. Okay. Also, India has a target of transforming India into a developed nation by 2047. So, for this transformation, you cannot look for metamorphosis, rather a rapid development, a rapid change, a rapid course of action is the need of the hour. Now, what is the way ahead for this? Gender parity is not a term just as in we speak about to get it overnightly transformed, right? The struggle to achieve gender equality and bridge the gap between men and women is a long and difficult one. Yes. Time and again, that's a time tested theory, time proven theory. The Global Gender Gap Index benchmarks the current state and the evolution of gender parity across four dimensions. The gender gap, if we have to improve, if we have to, if not just we, any nation, okay, if it has to be holistic, if it has to be sustainable, then it has to make sure all these sectors are basis for providing equality for both the genders. One is your economic participation and opportunities, okay? Educational attainment, health and survival, political empowerment. Here, if either one of it is provided and the other is made a hindrance, it will not be holistic. If it has to be holistic, everything has to go hand in hand. Okay? Now, I would say Japan's scenario should serve us as an example if we want to transform ourselves and then stay and then reach ahead higher, basically a sustainable development of growth. If India needs, or if India looks at it as the need of the hour, then this is what we have to do, a sustainable development in the growth sector, in the gender gap sector.